Hey, writers! I miss ya, and it's just getting ready to be the start of a new week. And I'm a little behind on videoing, so I may just be doing one a day for now. I've had a busy weekend. How's your weekend been? Beautiful weather, a little chilly and windy today. So I want to review kind of where you should be at this point, and now you should really kind of have a bit of a draft of your idea that you're going to work with. Now, I'm going to end up writing about Cowboy, and literally, I just have a few paragraphs about him. It's not much. It's mostly just that it's still that seed idea. It's still that brief idea that I'm going to write about. So look at your own notebook. What is it that you think that you will write about? So flip back, look through your ideas that we've brainstormed, and just be thinking while I review a little bit about what we've done. So we did brainstorm some ideas, and we figured out that the biggest impact are the ideas, the moments, the times where we're starting to realize something about ourselves or about others during this pandemic. And during some of our group sessions, you all have said, yeah, but when I realized that staying at home is really boring and I actually miss school, even though I don't really like school, I kind of miss being there. You said that's just not a very exciting story. And I, you're right. It's not like an exciting story, like a car chase scene or a spy story. But for the people that will want to read about this time in our lives, or for you as a person, these are important stories. Even if they feel boring, what you're coming to realize about yourself or about others or about people you care about or about the places we live and the things we experience, they will be powerful stories. Just because you're not Bo and Luke Duke chasing down some bad guys on the back road doesn't mean it's not a story worth writing. So keep that focus. A few of you have decided that for these parts, you're going to do more like journal entries. You're going to keep some daily reflections from each day, almost like a diary or a journal, and use that as your work. And I'm definitely encouraging that. And for a few of you, you really do have a story idea. Your mom is teaching you how to make Navy eggs, or you have gotten to foster a puppy and you're getting to experience some of that, or your parents are still having to work and you have to stay at home, and now there's just this whole new set of responsibilities. And so no matter what kind of story you tell, whether they're journal entries or diary entries, or whether they're an actual narrative where we're going to have this moment in this real small detail, but then it's going to have that beginning, middle, and end. All of those are fine. All of those are great. So what I want us to do today, regardless of whether you're doing journal entries or writing poems or writing songs or doing a graphic depiction comic of these days, is I want you to remember that we've talked about using mentor texts to guide you. And that's going to actually be pretty important for today's work. The very first pages, the very first sentences of our writing are what hooks our readers in. So even if you're just kind of doing those journal entries, eventually you might want to write like a bit of a prologue or an introduction that helps the reader understand why you were doing this and the feeling of the moment in time. And we go back to our mentor texts to see how writers begin those stories. So what I want to talk to you about today is just about crafting a memorable lead, but not just one lead. Because before we go into actually writing our story for the way that we want to publish it, you want to try out some different ways to begin. I'm going to go over how I do that with my own writing as a strategy for you. And this is using a mentor text. If you're writing a song, then you might you'll be looking at songs to say, well, how do these artists put their lyrics together? Or how do poets capture this image with just these few words? Or how do authors get a reader hooked with what they're writing? And the reason we want to look at several is because we've got our basic draft, like start to finish, kind of here's the basic things. But now we're crafting that story. And a story is where we want to really get deeper into our overall meaning and how we might do that. All right. So we've looked at this book before as a mentor. And we've talked a lot about how you kind of go section by section to see what they're doing. When we talked about it last week, we just showed, we learned about the dad's personality because in the dialogue, we learned about how the mom and dad really care. I mean, the dad was the one that actually told her she got polio, not the doctor. We showed how this particular author zoomed in on like the moment when her leg was kind of jumping underneath her school skirt, and that distracted her, and she really described that using that figurative language. So all of that to say, when we're going back to maybe help us start a writing, we might want to even get a little bit more specific. Because if I don't know how to start something, which if you know me, it takes a lot for me to go, how am I going to start? Then I might want to go almost sentence by sentence to say, all right, what's going on here? What's going on in the next sentence? What's going on after that? And then try that out in my own writing. Okay, so let's just see how I accomplish some of that. So in our first paragraph here, if we look at how the author begins, that very first sentence, my ordeal began on a Friday, early in September, right? So we've got a date, we've got a time, and then we've got this word ordeal, right? So that we have that word that draws attention. So I want to think about, maybe I could use a date and time and some kind of strong word that might draw the reader in. Right? That could be my very first sentence, right? In school that morning, all right, so I'm backing up to a little bit that morning. I glanced at the clock often, an action. So going back in time, then I'm getting an action. Eager for the homecoming parade at 4:00. So we're anticipating the future. So we've got an action, like something, I'm thinking of something in the future, all right? As a 7th grader, it was my first chance to take part in the homecoming fun. For a week, my friends and I had spent every spare moment working on the 7th grade float, and we were sure it would win first prize, all right? So we got a couple of sentences then, an explanation of that anticipation, okay? So how might this transfer to my own writing? So when I tried it out, I said I mimicked their sentence almost specifically. Date of the beginning and some kind of word to hook my reader, hopefully, right? So the chase began late in the day on March 27th, 2020. And just having that help with that very first sentence, I could go, all right, I'm ready. All right. Late in the day. And I know now I'm going to go a little bit back in time, and then I'm going to get some action and some anticipation. So I worked on that. Earlier that morning, I had caught Cowboy, a small, old, feisty, and fierce brown and white chihuahua we are fostering, out in the garage, running free from his pen. This frustrated me only a little. So there's my anticipation, and now I'm getting into my explanation. Because in his long life, Cowboy had only lived in a small crate, unloved and uncared for by a backyard breeder. However, I needed to run errands as we settled into sheltering in place due to the pandemic, and I didn't want him to escape. So I've taken Peg Carrot's words, analyzed them for kind of like a recipe, like Step 1, step 2, step 3, and then use that recipe in my own writing. Okay? I also noted like when she changed paragraphs because I want to make sure that I eventually have some paragraphs in there, not just one big long thing. So this is where my new paragraph would be. So what did she do in this next section then? All right. So where she was at the first notice of the incident, she was in chorus. We were practicing. And then this is what I really like. Usually the words, "Give me your tired, your poor," brought goosebumps to my arms. So here's some typical feeling, but what? On homecoming day, I was distracted by a twitching muscle in my left thigh. All right. So she's got a contrasting feeling and then an action that resulted from that feeling. So let's check that out. So where she was at first time, specific incident. So I started like this. Mike honked the horn just as I lunged for Cowboy, causing him to jump up comically as my foot slid out from underneath me, causing me to come down comically. My laughter built up, mentally giving a point to Cowboy. But now I got to shift. It's time to shift. But my frustration rose too because he was not a dog that would come to you or that you could get your hands on. You had to basically lure and trap him, and my time was running short. All right, so there we go. So when we talk about using a mentor text, think of yourself as writing a recipe. All right, writing a recipe for your writing. Because a lot of times we just sit there and go, "I don't know how to begin, Miss Schick." And you know what? I don't either. So I get a book, I get a mentor text, I get a poem, I get an essay, and I say, how did this person start? All right. So here's another one. Once I've rehearsed one entry, one lead, I might go into another one. So if I looked turning 15 on the road to freedom, I might say, all right, by the time I was 15 years old, I had been in jail 9 times. But how could I use that? I haven't been in jail 9 times. My story isn't about being in jail. Well, what's my recipe? By the time I was 15 years old, so I've got an age and an event, a repeated event. All right? What could I say? Well, by the time Cowboy was 14 years old, he had fathered 22 litters of puppies. There we go. Take a sentence, work with it. Then she goes on to, I was born in Selma, Alabama in 1950. That kind of thing. So I say, he was born only to be used as breeder stock. And I can go into it that way. So this lead might give me more about Cowboy's history. This lead puts us kind of in the beginning of the big chase. And I could even find one more mentor text that I can try out. Okay? So that's kind of your goal for your first activity. Whatever your seed idea is, whatever you feel you're going to write about, I want you to get a mentor text, analyze those first couple of paragraphs, making a recipe, here are the sentences, and then trying out your story with those different leads. And I want you to try about three different leads. Now, this doesn't mean you're writing your whole story right now, but I want you to try 3 leads. Because once you pick the lead that you really like, that might dictate the rest of your story and how it will work. Okay? All right. So You're crafting a lead for your story. Use a mentor text and try out 3 different kinds. That just means the first page, the first couple of paragraphs. I mean, if your mentor text starts with a lot of dialogue, then I can't say, well, only do 2 paragraphs, because each time somebody speaks, it's a new paragraph. But that's our first one. Okay? All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow with our lesson for tomorrow. See you guys.